Welcome to Kanerika's podcast, The Digital Shift. I'm your host, and we have a truly fascinating deep dive for you today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this material with you. There's just so much to cover.
There really is. And, if you've been working in IT or enterprise architecture for, well, more than 5 minutes, you undoubtedly have a data migration horror story.
Oh, definitely. We all do.
You know the exact scenario. It's 3:00 a.m. on a Sunday. Your entire team is sweating over their keyboards, essentially holding their breath.
Seeing their fingers.
Exactly. Crossing their fingers and just praying the legacy systems won't crash during the massive weekend cutover.
Right. It's terrifying.
But as we look at the enterprise landscape in 2026, that mindset, that panic-driven weekend warrior approach is officially obsolete.
It truly is. The way organizations handle data transitions has fundamentally shifted over the last few years. Moving data is no longer viewed as just a technology checklist or an unavoidable IT headache.
It's way bigger than that now.
Exactly. It's evolved into a core organizational capability. It's a strategic, ongoing operation that requires serious cross-functional alignment. I mean, we're talking engineering, finance, legal, and the executive board all needing to be on the exact same page.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for today's deep dive into the content is to explore the top 11 data migration trends for enterprises in 2026.
It's a packed list.
It is. We are going to examine the strategy, the security, and the scalability of modern data movement. And we'll cover this entire landscape without getting bogged down in the hyper-technical weeds, so you walk away with maximum impact and actionable insights.
Which is crucial for anyone listening who's going through their own digital transformation journey right now.
Absolutely. But before we get into the specific structural trends, we really need to set the stage. What are the massive macro-level forces driving this evolution? Like, what's actually pushing enterprises to change how they move their data?
Well, there are 5 major pressures entirely reshaping data movement today, and they directly dictate business strategy. First up, we have cloud economics.
Yes. The budget.
Always the budget. Finance teams are heavily scrutinizing cloud bills right now. The days of simply lifting and shifting everything you own into the cloud, those days are completely over.
Because lifting and shifting blindly is essentially like moving to a new house and paying premium shipping rates to transport literal garbage, right?
That is a perfect analogy. You're paying for compute and storage on data you might never use again. Economic pressure forces strategic data selection. You have to know what's actually worth moving.
Makes total sense. What's the second force?
Regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
Think about rigorous frameworks like GDPR and SOX. Regulators now demand automated traceability.
They want the receipts for everything.
Every single thing. They expect you to definitively prove your data's security and integrity at every microsecond of the migration.
Wait, but I know a lot of compliance officers who still, absolutely love their manual spreadsheets and highlighters.
Oh, I've seen those spreadsheets.
Right. So are we saying the technology is forcing them to change their habits, or is the regulatory environment just getting too complex for humans to track?
It's entirely about scale and complexity. I mean, a human simply cannot manually trace 3 petabytes of customer records shifting across distributed cloud architectures in real time. Manual audits are dead because the sheer scale makes them physically impossible.
That's a huge shift. And that brings us to the third force, right?
Yeah, and it's one we hear about constantly, AI expectations. Everyone wants to implement generative AI across their enterprise right now.
Of course. It's the shiny new toy.
But AI models are completely useless and sometimes actively harmful if they're fed bad data. The urgency to fix data quality before feeding it to an AI model is at an all-time high.
The classic garbage in, garbage out dilemma. But now with billion-dollar algorithms at stake?
Exactly the issue. You cannot wait years to curate perfect data anymore. You need rapid migration approaches that clean data on the fly.
Wow. Okay, what about the fourth force?
That would be platform standardization. Enterprises are desperately trying to consolidate their platforms to reduce operational complexity. Especially after M&A activity, a company might suddenly find itself with 15 different customer relationship management platforms.
Standardizing platforms across a global enterprise has to be an absolute nightmare for the people actually doing the work. You're dealing with different time zones, different languages, deeply entrenched legacy workflows.
It is a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And because teams are migrating repeatedly using similar patterns to consolidate these systems, they desperately need reusable, standardized migration frameworks. They can't just start from scratch every single time.
Which is just terribly inefficient anyway. And the fifth force.
Security and privacy risks. Cyber threats during data transitions are incredibly severe. Data is often most vulnerable when it's in transit.
Because it's moving between the safe zones.
Right. A breach during a transition exposes vulnerabilities that attackers are actively scanning for. Security can no longer be a final checkpoint. It must be baked into the architecture from day one.
So if your organization is feeling the squeeze on cloud costs, or you're facing pressure from the board to rush an AI implementation, those five forces are exactly why you are feeling the heat.
Precisely.
This brings us perfectly to our first cluster of trends, which focus heavily on how the actual culture of migration is changing. We are looking at a governance and quality revolution. Let's talk about how the timeline of migration is viewed today.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are seeing a massive shift toward continuous modernization programs. That's trend number one. Historically, migrations were discrete, one-time projects.
You got a budget, you moved the data, you disbanded the team.
Exactly. That does not happen anymore. Migrations happen in ongoing waves. You have quarterly cloud infrastructure upgrades, monthly AI model updates, continuous system consolidations.
It just never stops.
Never. Because the movement of data never truly ends, the funding models and governance structures must shift from temporary project oversight to permanent capability management.
Which means we need entirely new operational structures. And that's trend number two, a permanent migration PMO, alongside a strict decision authority matrix.
Yes, the PMO is critical now.
I actually love this concept because it eliminates the classic loudest voice wins scenario. In every enterprise, there is always that one senior executive who tries to aggressively pause a migration at 11:00 p.m. on a Friday because they forgot to back up their personal analytics dashboard.
We have all worked with that executive.
Oh, definitely.
In the past, whoever argued the most aggressively usually got their way, regardless of how it impacted the overall architecture. Now, having clear decision rights, knowing exactly who approves scope changes, who sets the schedule, who authorizes the cutover, it removes the emotion from the process.
It just makes it objective.
Exactly. It actually speeds up delivery by preventing those late-stage, panic-driven reversals that derail entire timelines.
But how do you enforce that predictability? Because having a matrix is great on paper, but standardizing the actual execution requires a totally different level of rigor.
It does. It requires trend number 3, quality engineering, as a permanent work stream. We are moving away from testing being a vague phase at the end of a project.
Right.
This is about establishing measurable service level objectives, or SLOs. For instance, requiring 99.5% completeness for critical customer fields, or setting a financial reconciliation tolerance at a maximum of 0.01% variance.
Let's slow down there for a second. How does a company actually enforce a release gate like that in real time? If I'm moving millions of rows of data, how do I stop a migration mid-flight because it hit a 0.02% variance?
You utilize automated release gates. The migration pipeline is programmed to constantly sample and validate the data as it moves.
So it's actively watching the stream.
Yes. If the data fails to meet those quantifiable thresholds, the system physically halts the progression to production. It routes the anomalous data to a quarantine zone for human review. Data simply cannot progress if it violates the SLO.
And you clearly cannot enforce those automated gates without deep visibility, which is trend number 4, migration observability.
A vital piece of the puzzle.
This isn't just generating a PDF report of what failed after the fact. It's having real-time dashboards monitoring throughput, transformation success, and error rates dynamically.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting for us. We at Kanerika see this operational shift every day. Our FYP platform is built exactly for this. A self-service data ops platform with built-in governance and AI to automate those data pipelines and turn chaotic migrations into smooth, continuous flows.
That level of operational control is absolutely vital to maintaining business continuity. When you introduce a low-code approach like that, you can physically see the stress levels of the engineering team drop. Because the governance is automated, they aren't manually tracking errors in a spreadsheet.
It's a game changer for team morale alone.
It really is. And as we move into the next cluster of trends focusing on architecture, consistency, and cost, we see how technical and financial safeguards are becoming institutionalized. Let's look at trend 5, data contracts and schema governance.
Which is fascinating.
Think of these like software APIs, but explicitly designed for data movement.
Give me a tangible example of this. What actually happens when a downstream application breaks because a data structure changed unexpectedly during a migration?
Imagine an enterprise logistics company. Their legacy inventory database stores a zip code as a standard five-digit number. During the migration to a new cloud platform, the engineering team decides to upgrade the field to accept a nine-digit format to be more precise.
Okay. Seems harmless enough. Better data, right?
Right. But they do not tell the downstream application that prints the actual shipping labels. When the migration goes live, the shipping application receives a nine-digit code, fails to parse it, and instantly crashes.
Oh, no.
The migration was technically successful, but you just halted global logistics.
That is a nightmare scenario.
Data contracts prevent this. They explicitly define what downstream systems expect: field names, data types, update frequencies. They formalize the agreement between data producers and consumers.
That structural alignment makes total sense. But what about the actual meaning of the data? And this brings us to trend 6, semantic consistency.
Yes, the business mean.
Because if I call a metric revenue in the sales department, but the finance department defines revenue differently, maybe factoring in deferred contracts, the technical migration might go perfectly, but the business side completely breaks down.
What you are describing is the absolute necessity for semantic consistency. It's not just moving data from point A to point B, it's ensuring the word revenue means the exact same thing in the CRM as it does in billing.
Which sounds simple, but is incredibly difficult in practice.
Extremely difficult. If you do not reconcile those conflicting definitions before the technical work begins, your business users are going to spend weeks in conference rooms fighting over which dashboard is displaying the correct numbers. Technical accuracy means absolutely nothing without business consistency.
That is a massive friction point between IT and the rest of the business. And speaking of friction, let's talk about the money. Trend number 7 is FinOps-driven planning. The culture clash between engineering teams wanting the most robust tools and finance teams trying to cap the budget is legendary.
It is, and finance is winning that battle by establishing rigorous cost models. Cost models and unit economics now determine which workloads move first. We are talking about tracking incredibly granular metrics, like dollars per gigabyte migrated.
It's wild to think that an incredibly expensive, clunky legacy system might actually become the priority for migration over a simpler, cheaper platform simply because the return on investment of shutting it down is so high.
ROI is the ultimate deciding factor now. Cost visibility is non-negotiable. And similarly, compliance visibility has undergone a massive shift, which brings us to trend 8, auditability by design.
In the past, compliance teams would review migrations during final audits months after the fact, and they'd discover massive security gaps when it was far too late to easily fix them,
Which usually resulted in massive fines.
or incredibly expensive retroactive engineering to patch the holes. With compliance teams involved early, audit trails and data lineage are built in automatically.
Precisely. You operate under the assumption that the regulators are going to audit you tomorrow, so you make your systems evidence ready by default. It transforms regulatory compliance from a frantic, stressful burden into a structural advantage.
Okay, let's transition to our final cluster of trends, which covers the actual execution, the role of AI, and what the content refers to as the factory blueprint. Let's address the elephant in the room with trend 9. AI used more for planning than full automation. Everyone assumes AI is going to automate everything.
The fully autonomous, set-it-and-forget-it migration is complete myth right now. Enterprises have experienced high-profile AI failures and hallucinations in production environments.
So the robots are not entirely taking over the weekend cutovers just yet.
Not without supervision. AI is brilliant for mapping incredibly complex system dependencies or rapidly generating code to translate an old database schema to a new one. But human-in-the-loop oversight is strictly required for actual execution.
You leverage the speed of the machine but retain the accountability of the human.
Exactly. You use the AI to recommend the optimal sequence of events, but a senior engineer must review and approve the final plan.
That perfectly leads into trend 10, the dual speed cutover strategy. This is fascinating because you don't treat a low-risk test environment the same as highly regulated financial records. Speed is adjusted based on risk.
You have to adjust your speed. Low-risk domains can move incredibly quickly utilizing highly automated checks. But high-risk migrations like patient health records or active trading data face much stricter governance gates and multiple manual approval checkpoints.
It perfectly balances the business's demand for speed with the legal necessity for absolute safety. Which brings us to the ultimate culmination of all these concepts. Trend 11, The Migration Factory Blueprint.
This is where it all comes together.
This is about turning chaotic one-offs into a repeatable industrial process.
When you are dealing with quarterly cloud upgrades, continuous M&A activity, and rolling AI deployments, treating each migration as a unique snowflake is completely unsustainable.
You can't start from zero every time.
No. Organizations are building dedicated centers of excellence. They are creating standardized templates and validation packs. A factory mindset is the only practical way to scale across a global enterprise.
So what does this all mean? We have talked a lot about the theory and the frameworks. How does this actually play out in the field? Let's pivot to the hard stats to show you, the listener, the real-world impact of adopting this factory framework.
The operational outcomes are dramatic when these trends are applied correctly. Let's look at the financial services sector from the material. We saw a major institution shift from a traditional waterfall methodology to continuous validation.
And what was the result?
They cut a delayed 18-month timeline down to just 12 months, and they brought it in 15% under budget.
Catching data quality issues during the final testing phase is always the most expensive time to fix them. Catching them early saved all that capital.
Exactly right. And the stakes are even higher in healthcare. The material outlines a vast healthcare network moving massive amounts of patient records. By moving to an outcome-driven framework with built-in governance, they achieved zero compliance violations.
Zero. That's unheard of in a massive migration.
And they maintained 99.8% system uptime during the move. The doctors and nurses on the floor barely noticed the system was being overhauled.
And finally, looking at manufacturing. A hybrid approach moved supply chain systems across 15 different international facilities in just 6 months. The most impressive part, less than 4 hours of total production downtime combined across all 15 locations.
That level of operational efficiency is only possible when you treat migration as a highly engineered, continuously governed capability rather than an ad hoc emergency project.
Those results truly speak for themselves. To wrap up today's insights, migrating data is now a strategic, cross-functional business operation. It is no longer a temporary state of transition.
Adopting a factory mindset with strong governance, observability, and FinOps will completely de-risk an organization's future tech ambitions. It is the only way to meet evolving demands without succumbing to the traditional chaos.
We at Kanerika are incredibly passionate about this. It's why our migration accelerators are designed to handle everything from Cognos to Power BI or Azure to Microsoft Fabric. We help businesses build these exact, scalable, secure migration factories to future-proof their data infrastructure.
This raises an important question, and it is something I want to leave you to ponder as you look at your own organization's architecture. If data migration is no longer a temporary state of transition, but a permanent, continuous state of flow, how does that fundamentally change the way your organization values data in motion versus data at rest? Does data only truly hold value when it is moving and adapting?
A brilliant and provocative thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the content. Stay curious, keep innovating, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.